3 days before the new semester. The chirping of insects was quite pleasant to the ear. The stream, illuminated by moonlight in the northern forest at night, had a unique atmosphere that could stabilize a person's mind. I sat in front of the crackling campfire, preparing the fish. Over the past 3 days, I'd done quite a lot of work just to survive. The makeshift shelter had become considerably decent. Initially made from wood, cloth, and leaves, it was reinforced with clay from the riverbank, making it look much more convincing. The connections between the supports were more solid now, and the roof didn't have any gaps that could leak, even if it rained. However, I needed to reinforce the structure, as it might not be able to withstand the weight of the clay. In the process, its size had also increased considerably. What about the food? I found rock salt in the downstream parts of the river that led to the coast. I crushed the pieces of salt rock to use as seasoning. Additionally, I could attempt cooking on the broad flat stones I found by the riverside instead of on a grill. I'm getting used to this now. The makeshift fishing rod I created couldn't catch big fish, but I occasionally managed to hook something edible like bluegill, even though it was mostly small minnows. I had gotten quite skilled at preparing fish. Using the ceremonial dagger that had become a survival tool, I gutted the fish and removed their innards. Then I scraped off the large scales with the blade and made cuts on the fish to help the salt penetrate before grilling them on the flat stone. You have completed a new dish. Grillugel with sauté, grilled bluegill caught from the riverside, seasoned with salt. Simple, but the taste of the ingredients is dutifully presented. Cooking level 1.5. Your cooking proficiency has increased, and this was a new development. There was no such message when I just randomly cooked fish, but as I started to properly prepare and season the ingredients, my cooking skill level began to rise. The proficiency of life skills was being reflected in the level up process. Therefore, I took out the ceremonial mirror to look at my face and checked the information again. Boo name, Ed Roth Taylor. A gender male. Age, 17. Grade, 2. Race, human. Achievements known. Strength, 3. Intelligence, 4. Dexterity, 8. Willpower, 7. Luck, 6. Detailed combat ability, detailed magic ability, detailed life ability, Penn's detailed alchemy ability. My dexterity stat had risen from 7 to 8. In Sylvania's Failing Sword Saint, in the proficiency of various life skills was incredibly important. Skills like cooking, construction, woodworking, and alchemy not only create various useful objects themselves, but also have practical implications for combat ability. Especially, the dexterity stat is closely related to fine sensory perception, catching minor flows of power and movement. Though it has little overlap with magic, it can make a meaningful difference in swordsmanship, archery, or even alchemy. I'm not sure when the attribute increase happened, but the advantage of just 1 point in dexterity is really significant. After all, the higher the attribute, the harder it is to increase. It might not take long to raise a 34 level attribute to 7-8, but as you approach the ultimate spec of 20 and above, you might have to complete a legendary quest just to gain a single attribute point. Most life skill proficiencies are closely linked to dexterity. A combat ability, strength, dexterity, willpower, magic ability, intelligence, willpower, luck. Life ability, dexterity, willpower, alchemy ability, intelligence, luck. It may seem complicated, but the essence is that each ability is affected by different stats. I picked a piece of fish flesh and put it in my mouth. It was quite tasty with the salt soaked in. I gulped down some water from the stream, then sat down on a large rock I'd brought over to use as a chair. There's still a lot to do. The wooden shelter was uncomfortable at first, but it had become fairly cozy. I had plenty of spare clothes. Food was manageable for now, catching fish and collecting berries and such from the forest. I couldn't say I was living in luxury, but it was something I could gradually improve. I need to make a drying rack to do my laundry, and I can manage to make something makeshift for that. I need to get to know some edible plants if I want to diversify the food. Maybe there are some related books in Professor Hall's library. I want to rely not only on fishing and foraging, but also try hunting. Yesterday, while strolling through the forest, I spotted wild boars roaming around. There seemed to be other creatures like rabbits and squirrels too. Akin Island is where Sylvania Academy is located, and it was in the middle of a massive monster suppression. Monsters that posed a threat to human life were rarely seen. But there were many wild animals that were part of nature itself. Hunting wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. Not just for meat supply but also because if I could collect fat from animals, the quality of my cooking could be deepened. Now that I think about it, I need some cooking tools as well. The ceremonial items used during academy events were all the household tools I had. The ceremonial dagger, metal bowl, and mirror. All had to be kept neat. But there was no time to worry about such formalities at this stage. The ceremonial dagger had gone through thick and thin already, and there was no way the bowl or mirror could stay clean. It couldn't be helped. If I just had a proper pot, kitchen knife, ladle, and some bowls to put the food in, that would be really convenient. I started jotting down the various items I needed on the ground with a twig. I couldn't leave Akin Island right now, and had no money. But if I managed to get some, these were the things I desperately wanted to buy. So much to do still. There are only 3 days before school starts. Sigh. I let out a deep sigh and stretched myself. However, my living situation had become somewhat livable. My dwelling, that I diligently worked to put together over the last week, now finally looked like something you could call a camp. The wooden shelter where I had put in the most effort. A campfire surrounded by pebbles for efficient management. On top of it was a broad flat stone that replaced a cooking grate. Next to it were my personal belongings from Ophelius Hall, neatly arranged, with various homemade household tools that I'd crafted also neatly organized. Today, maybe I'll try to make a bow with silk. It was a huge help that among the items I'd brought was some silk, mixed with the fabric. I had to muster tears to unravel the fine textile. But after all, the fishing line came from the silk thread, and it helped tie the roof of the shelter. Because it was quite high quality and strong, it could be twisted and used as bowstring without any problems. I had noted a suitable tree for the bow frame in the forest already. If I could craft a bow and master its use, it would be a great help. Above all, archery skills match well with magical and life production skills. If I could modify arrows or enchant them, their effectiveness would skyrocket. If I could fill those auxiliary weapon proficiencies in advance, it would directly influence my future skill growth. Experience has shown me that if you try to learn in haste, archery proficiency lags behind other specialized skills, causing an imbalance. Expect the unexpected. No matter how busy, keep moving forward and taking care of what needs to be done. Looks like it's going to be another long night. I rotated my shoulders to loosen up, ready to dive back into crafting. Looks like I'm going to bed late again tonight. Dean McDowell stroked his mustache with a content smile on his face. It had been a while since he smiled like this. For someone with his gentle nature, the role of Dean of Sylvania's magic department was excessively strenuous. Not just the eccentric student, body of the magic department, but even the professors themselves were overwhelmingly egotistical. Being knocked around trying to mediate between them, McDowell's once glossy black hair had gradually turned white. When looking at the deans of the combat and alchemy departments, they don't seem to struggle as much as he does, making him sometimes think that his position is particularly more burdensome. Yet, there are occasions when he feels rewarded for his efforts. Reviewing the class assignment report for the first-year students of Sylvania, his lips curled into a smile. This year's lineup of first-year students at Sylvania's magic department was akin to a gold mine. The glistening talents of Vera Jules made even the aged McDowell's heart flutter. First was the indication that Professor Glast had personally assigned 3 students to Class A. Not only the students, but even the high-ranking professors who shook their heads at Professor Glast's toughness had approved 3 students. Their spear of foliage, Zix, one who bloomed his talent even in the harsh environment of the northern plains. The only daughter of the Golden King, Eltiki Helm, who leads the Eltid Trade Company. The Golden Daughter Lortel. And a girl, with no known family or clear past, but with sheer overwhelming talent alone caused Professor Glast to clap his hands. The slothful Lucy, especially concerning Merrill. Even McDowell couldn't hide his amazement at the praises from Professor Glast. She is born with the qualities of a great magician capable of writing a new chapter in magic history. It's an honor to become her mentor. Considering Professor Glast's previous remarks, one could hardly estimate just how talented an individual she was. Compared to last year, this year's freshman class was a bumper crop. There were almost no standout students from last year's freshman class. Only Yenika, who succeeded in contracting a high-level spirit, managed to catch the dean's eye. Instead, the average grades were declining, and there was even a student expelled from their family for tampering with the entrance exams. It was arguably the worst generation of Class 1 so far. It seems last year was quite dark just for this year to shine. Hoping that the great name of Sylvania would be elevated once more, Dowell was about to sign off on the report. Dean. Excuse me, but a visitor has arrived. His secretary knocked on the office door. He had instructed to not allow unscheduled visitors during work hours, but it seemed that already was forgotten. McDowell sighed with annoyance, and about to remind his secretary, when the door burst open. Before he could give permission, the person who opened the door was the captain of the Royal Guard, Knight Clare, a direct subordinate of Princess Fenia. Following him, Princess Fenia entered wearing her light blue dress, Dean McDowell was startled and bowed his head quickly in front of the royal presence, then halted himself abruptly. This was the Faculty Hall of Sylvania, a place where the virtue of learning precedes the distinction of rank. Outside this hall, he may be just another citizen who must bow to royal authority. But here, Dean McDowell was the princess's teacher. While he couldn't disregard the princess, he must face her as her educator. That was the decree of the emperor who established Sylvania. Dean McDowell finished showing respect by simply bowing his head. His secretary knocked on the office door. He had instructed to not allow unscheduled visitors during work hours, but it seemed that already was forgotten. "What brings your highness to the faculty hall at this hour?" "I apologize for not notifying you in advance, Dean McDowell." Despite her petite stature, Princess Funia stood majestically and sat demurely on the office's guest sofa. Behind her stood Royal Knight Claire and two other guard knights firmly. "I wish to seek your counsel." "May I?" A Princess Funia, the embodiment of mercy, was not one to oppress others with authority. McDowell was well aware of this. Nonetheless, there was an implicit significant reason she would barge into the dean's office unannounced like this to talk. Regardless, Dean McDowell had no choice to listen to what she had to say.